We all know how crucial it is to ensure our vehicle is in top shape, but let's zoom in on a component that often gets overlooked: the brakes and rotors. These are the unsung heroes of your vehicle, tirelessly working to keep you safe on the road. When well maintained, they not only provide optimal stopping power but also significantly reduce the risk of accidents. But the benefits don't stop there. Regular brake and rotor maintenance can save you a pretty penny in the long run. It prevents costly repairs down the line and extends the lifespan of your vehicle. Think of it as an investment in your safety, your vehicle's health, and your wallet. So, whether you're a seasoned mechanic or a DIY enthusiast, understanding the importance of brake and rotor maintenance is paramount. So now that we understand why it's so important, let's get into the nitty-gritty of how to replace the brakes and rotors. Like any good mechanic, we first gather all our tools and materials. To successfully replace the brakes and rotors on a 2002 Chevy Silverado 1500, we should ensure that we have everything we need at our fingertips. The list may seem lengthy, but each item plays a vital role in the process. First on our list are the new brake pads and rotors. Make sure these are the correct ones for your vehicle. A sturdy jack and a lug wrench are essential for lifting and securing the vehicle. A complete socket set is also necessary for removing and replacing various nuts and bolts. Our torque wrench will ensure all bolts are tightened to the correct specifications. A brake caliper tool will assist in pushing back the caliper piston. Brake cleaner is vital for removing dirt and debris, and a pair of mechanic's gloves will protect your hands throughout the job. With all our tools at the ready, we're set to start the replacement process. The first step is removing the old brakes. So let's dive right in, shall we? Right off the bat, safety is paramount. So, before we get our hands dirty, we need to ensure the vehicle is safely lifted. Using a reliable jack stand, we'll raise the vehicle off the ground, giving us ample space to work with. Once the vehicle is secure, we're ready to roll. Next up, we'll get to work on removing the wheel. Grab your lug wrench and turn those lug nuts counterclockwise. Remember, lefty-loosey. It may take a bit of elbow grease, but once they're loose, the wheel should slide right off. Set the wheel aside, but keep it close. We'll be needing it again soon. Now, we're ready to tackle the brake caliper. This is the part that houses the brake pads, so it's crucial we remove it carefully. Using a ratchet and socket, we'll loosen the bolts holding the caliper in place. Once they're loose, we can slide the caliper off and secure it with a bungee cord, ensuring it doesn't hang by the brake line, which could cause damage. With the caliper out of the way, we've got a clear path to the old brake pads. These should slide out fairly easily. If they're a bit stubborn, a gentle tap with a hammer should do the trick. But remember, we're working with precision parts here, so be gentle. After removing the old brake pads, we'll take a moment to inspect the brake caliper piston. If it's extended out due to the worn-out pads, we'll need to compress it back in using a C-clamp. This will allow us to fit the new, thicker brake pads later on. And there you have it. The old brakes are off, and we're ready to move on to the next step. It's a bit of a process, but with a little patience and elbow grease, you'll find it's not as daunting as it might seem. With the old brakes off, we're halfway there. Let's keep this momentum going, shall we? Now we're ready to install the new brakes. First things first, let's get those new brake pads out. Are they looking shiny and new? Alright, let's get to it. Slide the new brake pads into the caliper bracket. They should fit snugly into the slots. If they don't force them. Double check to make sure you have the right parts. If everything is in order, they should slide in with just a bit of convincing. Next, it's time to reattach the brake caliper. Remember that we had to compress the caliper piston earlier? Well, now it's going to pay off. The caliper should fit over the new brake pads easily. If it doesn't, you might need to compress the piston a bit more. Alright, we're almost there. Grab your caliper bolts and let's get this bad boy bolted back on. Thread the bolts back into the holes they came from, by hand first. This will help you avoid cross-threading. Once they're in place, use your ratchet or wrench to tighten them. Not too tight though, you don't want to strip the threads. Now, take a step back and give everything a good look. Are the brake pads sitting flush in the bracket? Is the caliper secured tightly? Does everything look properly aligned? If it all checks out, congratulations, you've just installed new brake pads. But wait, we're not done yet. It's crucial to remember that after installing new brake pads, they need to be bedded in. This process involves performing a series of hard and soft stops to transfer an even layer of brake pad material onto the brake rotor, which assists in smoother stops and extended brake system life. So, there we have it. With a bit of patience and elbow grease, you've successfully installed your new brake pads. It's a satisfying feeling, isn't it? But we're not stopping here. Oh no, with the new brakes installed, we're ready to tackle the rotors. Replacing the rotors is just as straightforward as the brakes. Let's dive into the process. The first step is to remove the old rotor. This might require a bit of elbow grease as these components can become quite stuck over time. Use your mallet to tap the rotor gently from behind, rotating it as you go to ensure even force. Remember, the goal here is to nudge it loose, not to hammer it into submission. Once the rotor is loose, pull it straight off the hub. Be careful not to drop it, as it's quite heavy. With the old rotor off, it's a good time to take a moment and clean the hub surface. Use a wire brush to clean off any rust or debris. This will ensure a clean, smooth surface for the new rotor to sit on. Now let's move on to installing the new rotor, but first, clean the new rotor with brake cleaner to remove any protective oil or residue. Then simply slide the rotor onto the hub. It should go on smoothly. If you're having trouble, check to ensure there's nothing obstructing the hub. With the rotor in place, it's time to ensure it's securely attached and aligned. Reinstall the brake caliper bracket over the rotor and secure it with the bolts. Tighten the bolts to the specified torque to make sure everything is snug. Then, spin the rotor a few times by hand. It should spin freely with minimal resistance. If it's not spinning freely, it could be an indication that something is misaligned, in which case you'll want to go back and double-check your work. Finally, apply a thin coat of anti-seize lubricant to the hub surface. This will make it easier to remove the rotor the next time you need to replace it. And there you have it. With the new rotor in place, we're almost done. Stay tuned for the final steps and safety checks to complete this job. Remember, doing it right is doing it safe. Before we wrap up, there are a few final steps and safety checks to complete. Having installed your new brakes and rotors, it's time to reattach the wheel. Carefully align the holes of the wheel with the studs of the hub, then hand thread the lug nuts until they're snug. Now, using your torque wrench, tighten these lug nuts in a crisscross pattern to ensure an even distribution of pressure. Remember, over-tightening can warp your new rotors, so it's crucial to refer to your vehicle's manual for the correct torque setting. Once the wheel is securely attached, it's time to lower the vehicle. Slowly release the hydraulic jack, allowing the vehicle to settle gently onto its wheels. Then give the lug nuts one last tighten for good measure. Now let's not forget about the brakes. Before hitting the road, you'll want to test your new brakes and rotors. Start the vehicle and slowly press down on the brake pedal. It should feel firm, not spongy or loose. If it does, there may be air in the brake lines, and you'll need to bleed the system. Once you're satisfied with the feel of the brake pedal, it's time for a short test drive. Choose a safe, quiet place to drive. Start slow, listening for any unusual noises and feeling for any vibrations. Gradually increase your speed, testing the brakes at different velocities to ensure they're working correctly. Lastly, let's tidy up. Clean up your workspace, making sure all tools are put away and no small parts are left lying around. Properly dispose of your old brakes and rotors, keeping in mind many auto parts stores offer recycling services for these items. Remember, your safety and the safety of others on the road is paramount. If you're unsure about any part of this process, it's always best to consult a professional. And that's it, you've successfully replaced your brakes and rotors.